indeed an enlightening story for you. Our next teller is Sherry Lovett. Sherry has been on various stages from classrooms to festivals, and she has a real connection with the British Isles and her roots there, and also with this country where she was born in and raised. So I'm sure that she will definitely teach us something about here.
Hey, everybody. Larry, that behavior would get you sent to my school. I teach at an alternative school in McDowell County, so he would definitely end up at my school. And Carolina, I want you to come to my school and tell stories. They were amazing. It is so good to be here, and I would like to share with you a historical story that has some personal connections for me. We leave our homes in the morning. We kiss our children goodbye. While we slave for the bosses, our children scream and cry. And when we draw our money, our grocery bill to pay, not a cent to spend for clothing, not a cent to lay away. And on that very evening, our little son will say, I need some shoes, Mother, and so does Sister May. Oh, it grieves the heart of a mother, you everyone must know. But we can't buy for our children, our wages are too low. That is the beginning of a ballad written by Ella Mae Wiggins, a strong, determined woman with a mind of her own. Ella Mae was born in 1900 in the Appalachian Mountains to a poor family. She spent her childhood moving from one logging camp to another. Her mother died when she was 18 and her father about a year later. It was around that time when she met and married a man by the name of John Wiggins. And in less than a year, they had their first child. Now, John thought they ought to move to a mill town so as they could get a mill job and have a regular income. And that took them to Cowpen, South Carolina. And Ella Mae's work in the textile mills began. Well, they moved from one mill town to another until in 1926, Ella Mae and her children landed in Gaston County, North Carolina. But not John. John abandoned Ella Mae and their children. But Ella Mae was a strong, determined woman with a mind of her own. Ella Mae got a job. She got a job with the Luray American Mill No. 2. She worked 12 hours a day, 6 days a week, and she only got $9 for her efforts. Now, in that time, segregation was the law of the land, but as I've said, Ella Mae had a mind of her own. She rented a little shack outside Bessemer City in an African-American neighborhood known as Stumptown, and her neighbors helped watch her children while she worked. Mill work was hard work. Long hours, noisy, dirty, tedious work, and it was beginning to get harder because the economy was in decline and there was more competition for the textile mills. And so the mill owners, mostly Northerners who'd come to the South to take advantage of the lenient labor laws here, decided they were going to employ new scientific management practices. Well, this meant they were going to require their workers to work longer hours and harder for the same money, sometimes less. Yeah. The mill owners called it new scientific management practices, but the workers called it the stretch out. Now, in that time, a lot of people associated unions with communism. And in North Carolina, sentiments ran high against both. But with mill conditions getting to be so bad, the National Textile Workers Union decided the time was right to gain a foothold in the South. And so they sent a union organizer named Fred Beal to come find a mill where people might be ready for a union. He found one. The Luray American Mill number 2. The people there were ready for a union, including Ella May. Ella May was a strong, determined woman with a mind of her own. She embraced the union. She learned organizational and strike tactics. She took on segregation and said that all people needed to stand together if the union was going to be successful. She even went to Washington, D.C. and testified. But whether she was testifying in D.C. or speaking at a regular meeting, she shared her personal story, and it had a powerful impact. I'm the mother of 9 children. They all got the whooping cough. I was working nights, and I asked the super if he'd put me on days so I could tend them during their bad spells, but he wouldn't let me. I don't know why. And 4 of my children died. I never made no more than $9 a week. You can't tend to a family on money such as that. That's why I come out for the union. That's why we've all got to stand together for the union, so as we can do better for our children and they won't have lives like we got. And Ella May would sing. She was the union balladeer. Fred Beal remembers. No evening would pass without a song from our Ella May. She'd be standing in the corner scribbling a new verse on the back of a union leaflet when someone would call out for her to sing. She'd step forward and begin a ballad in her deep, resonant voice, and then that would drift off into old hymns and spirituals. And many a praise the Lord would resound through the quiet night. Ella May sang with an unmodulated vibrancy that touched the emotions of her listeners. When she sang, "It grieves the heart of a mother, you everyone must know," everyone did know. And when she sang, "Let's stand together, workers, and have a union here," the crowd thrilled to the militancy in her voice. Ella May's ballads went from one mill to another, carrying better than any union leaflet the message about how the union could help the people have a better life. Well, in the spring of 1929, when the union did get started, 5 people were fired. The union voted to strike, and 1,800 people left their mill jobs. But as the weeks passed and the mill refused to negotiate, the money ran out, the food ran out, and people had to go back to their mill jobs. But 100 or so, including Ella May, were determined to stay the course. Even when they were forced out of their mill housing and had to live in a tent village set up by the union, they wouldn't give up, and tension began to mount. One day, Chief Adderholt and some local men who had been deputized went to break up a peaceful picket line made up of mostly women and children. Now, Chief Adderholt, he was kind enough, but the local men were rough and crude, showed little mercy. And then they went to the tent village. Confusion broke out, shots were fired, and Chief Adderholt was killed. All of the Strikers were rounded up, and 15 of them were charged with the death of Chief Adderholt, but they were later released when a mistrial was called, and tension in Gaston County continued to mount. Ella May was seen as a particular threat because of her stance on segregation and her association with the National Textile Workers Union. And she knew it. She'd been threatened. Her well water had been poisoned. But Ella May was a strong, determined woman with a mind of her own. They'll have to kill me to make me give up the union. In September of 1929, Ella May and some other union members were making their way to a meeting when they were met by an armed, angry mob and forced to turn around and go back. They'd gone about 5 miles back toward home when a car blocked their way. Armed men got out and began to shoot, and Ella May was shot in the chest and killed. Her body rests in a cemetery in Gaston County with a headstone that reads, "She was killed carrying the torch of social justice." And while Ella May's death is tragic, her life made a difference. Because even though unions never took hold in the South, mill conditions did improve with better hours, better pay, better conditions. And I know this to be true because I am the daughter of a textile mill worker. My daddy worked for over 30 years in a textile mill, and my family never lacked for a thing. And I know this to be due, at least in part, to the efforts of Ella May. It is for our little children that seem to us so dear, but for us nor them, dear workers, our bosses do not care. But understand, all workers, our union they do fear. Let's stand together, workers, and have a union here. In honor of Ella May and May 1st, which is International Workers' Day. Thank you all.